Hello there, IELTS students. Welcome to IELTS Podcast. You no longer have to worry, fret or panic about IELTS because we are here to guide you through this test jungle. Enjoy these IELTS tutorials, and if you need more help or want to access the famous online course, you can visit us at IELTSPodcast.com.
Hi IELTS students, today we are going to be looking at a very important kind of task 2 essay question. This is to what extent do you agree or disagree? My name's Daphne, IELTSPodcast.com. Thank you for listening to this. So in this tutorial today, we are going to look at to what extent do you agree or disagree? Task 2 essay questions. What we're going to do is look at how to plan and how to brainstorm. This is the most important part of the essay writing process for me, something that I strongly advise everybody to get into the habit of planning and brainstorming. Don't just pick up your pen and start writing. It doesn't work. Too often you will find yourself answering the wrong question. We're going to look at how to decide which way you want to argue, agree or disagree, and keep listening what to do if you kind of want to half agree and half disagree. This is clever and really worth understanding how to do. Then we're going to look at a model essay and go through this, see how it would score 7 or even above on task response, on cohesion, on lexical resource, and on grammatical range and accuracy. Those are the 4 key areas that you are graded on. Very, very important to understand how the marking is done. So, I'm Daphne. I have been teaching IELTS for around about 8 years, specialising in writing for, probably about 6 of those. This really came about and started teaching general English here in the UK. And then a lot of people said to me, can you help on writing? Because I really love writing. Myself, I like writing. I've always enjoyed reading a lot, and writing just goes naturally with that. And so I started specialising in how to guide people on how to write better. And this style of writing needed for academic writing and IELTS writing is very specific. We really need to understand what the examiner is looking at, really be able to express ourselves precisely and in formal language. These are all things that Ben goes into on the amazing Jump to Band 7 or its free course, how to express yourself academically and how to get your essay in the right shape to get a really, really good score. So let's get into this. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Task 2 questions. First thing we need to do is get a pen and underline the key words in the question. This is very important. Sometimes these IELTS questions are quite long and quite complicated. It's too easy to answer the wrong question. If you take a pen and underline these key words, you will make sure that you answer the right question. So the question we're going to look at today is this. Some people believe that professional workers, such as doctors and teachers, should be paid more than sports and entertainment personalities. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Give your opinion and relevant examples. So think about what you would underline there. Some people believe that professional workers, such as doctors and teachers, should be paid more than sports and entertainment personalities. So I definitely be underlining the bit should be paid more than. And I'm comparing these 2 sectors of the workforce here. What I'm going to do is do a little table, a very quick little table, and write down some points for agreeing and some points for disagreeing. And I'm going to decide, what do I think? What is my position? Because in my thesis statement in the introduction, I need to state my position. So I can partially agree, or I can 100% agree, or 100% disagree. Let's look in a bit more detail about how that might work. So my position is going to be they should be paid more, professionals such as doctors and teachers, but that is just not feasible in this real world. Feasible means that that's just not always possible. Although it should happen, it's just not always possible. So I'm going to think of ideas for my paragraphs, and my planning looks like this. So in my first paragraph, I'm going to argue that doctors are vital and they deserve a lot of money. And secondly, I'm going to talk about teachers, because remember the question says professional workers such as doctors and teachers. I'm then going to suggest that teachers educate our children and also deserve to be paid a lot or make a lot of money. In the second paragraph, I'm going to acknowledge that sports and entertainment personalities are paid a lot, but not all of them. So I'm going to come into the other side of this, and this is going to score me a good score in terms of developing the essay and showing that I really understand the question. So in my paragraph 2, I'm going to say there are valid reasons why entertainers and athletes make a lot of money, and develop that thought. But I'm also going to acknowledge that not all singers and athletes in these professions make a lot of money. So some people might work very hard singing or being an actor or trying to get to the top of sport, but not necessarily that successfully, in which case it's a very tough profession. So those are the ideas that I'm kind of going to bring into this essay. And the support, when it talks about giving examples, can be an example from a survey or from a newspaper report. This is a really, really good thing to add into an academic essay. It's so important that on the course there is a whole module dedicated to how to give examples. It's very important that you don't use a personal example that is not suitable for academic style writing. So we show you on the course how to add a professional style example that is relevant, that is general, and that is not personal. This is really important to get a good score here on the task achievement. If you don't want to do an example and you've got a lot of points to make, you can use further explanation, or you can use a statement suggesting why or how your main idea is true. So a supporting statement might be, for example, it's widely acknowledged that doctors save lives and carry enormous responsibility for their patients' well-being. So if you want some more help on your writing, check out our pages on IELTS Writing on the website, IELTSPodcast.com, sign up for the newsletter, or join our course, the IELTS online course, Jump to Band 7, or it's free, which will really help you with all aspects of this writing. So let's get into the planning and how it's going to look. So our introduction, we're going to start by rephrasing the prompt. That's rephrasing the main part of the essay question. Let me just remind you, we're talking, some people believe professional workers such as doctors and teachers should be paid more than sports and entertainment personalities. And to what extent, this is very important, to what extent do you agree or disagree? So in the introduction, we're going to rephrase that prompt, and we're going to make sure we include all the sides of that topic, not just a little bit of it. And that makes sure that we then go on to answer the right question. And we're going to state our position. If you partially agree, you can use a while statement. It's quite tricky to do this, and it does need some practice. It's a very good idea to get some feedback on your essays while you're doing your IELTS preparation. So you can send us your essay for some feedback. And if you're making a mistake on these, we can spot it and tell you, and then you can make sure that you don't make that mistake again. So while it's true that doctors and teachers perform priceless services, on the whole, I believe it's impossible for them to be paid what top entertainers are paid. I believe it's impossible for them to be paid what top entertainers are paid. So what I'm doing here is I'm acknowledging, I'm showing I agree that doctors and teachers are hugely valuable. They perform priceless services. But I'm saying that on the whole, I believe, this is my to what extent, on the whole, I believe it's impossible for them to be paid what top entertainers are paid. So my introduction is going to be 3 or 4 sentences. I'm not going to give too much detail here, but I'm going to add enough detail to show the examiner that I understand the question, and I'm going to lead the examiner into my essay. So I could also say something like this. There are numerous jobs where it could be argued that people are not paid nearly enough for what they do, as in the case of doctors and teachers. Some, in fact, say they should be paid more than sports or entertainment stars. While I understand the logic behind this, the world works differently and such a shift is impossible. Now, I really like that introduction. That final line in there, while I understand the logic behind this, the world works differently and such a shift is impossible, is very clever, because that makes me want to read more. That's taking the examiner into my next paragraph. This is what is going to score you a good mark on coherence, keeping the examiner interested, keeping moving forward with each sentence you write. So let's look at the structure of the essay. My paragraph is going to start with a topic sentence. A topic sentence is the topic sentence that introduces a central idea of the paragraph. The first key sentence, it tells me which way this paragraph is going to go. It tells me what the paragraph is going to be about. I want to start with a strong topic sentence. For example, doctors and teachers deserve to earn a great deal of money for the services they provide. That's a strong sentence. I can even put the word doubtless on the front. Doubtless doctors and teachers deserve to earn a great deal of money for the services they provide. And I'm going to follow this with the main idea, and I'm explaining why I've made that statement. Doctors save lives on a daily basis and take on a great responsibility in caring for their patients and their health. And then I'm going to support this. This is a skill that requires great intellect, arduous study, and should be compensated accordingly. So, doubtless doctors and teachers deserve to earn a great deal of money for the services they provide. Doctors save lives on a daily basis and take on a great responsibility in caring for their patients and their health. This is a skill that requires great intellect, arduous studying, and should be compensated accordingly. So you can see that there's some fantastic vocabulary in there. Each idea flows from the other one. And the vocabulary I'm using, a skill that requires great intellect, arduous studying, and should be compensated accordingly. So I'm not just going with they should get more money, which feels a bit simplistic for this lovely high-level essay, but should be compensated accordingly. I'm using a modal verb and then be compensated, a passive infinitive. So I'm going to score well here on the use of grammar. Then I'm going to add an extra idea because I've talked about doctors, but I haven't talked about teachers yet. The important role teachers play can also not be overlooked. Here's nice grammar coming up. Not only do they transmit knowledge to the future generations, but they're also directly involved in the shaping of characters, inspiring new ideas, and act as surrogate parents in many instances. So in a very neat sentence, not only do they transmit knowledge to the future generation, but are also directly involved in the shaping of characters, inspiring new ideas, and act as surrogate parents. I'm giving a lot of information about what teachers do in that one complex sentence. What I really like as well there is this idea of shaping of characters, inspiring new ideas, act as surrogate parents. That means instead of parents in many instances. This power of using 3 ideas is really good in academic writing. Again, there's a module about this style on the IELTS writing course. So I need to create a summary statement to that paragraph that's essentially a rephrasing of the topic sentence, but I don't want to repeat it. So I can begin with therefore, or thus, or consequently. So therefore, these roles, the serious of which cannot be overstated, establish teachers and doctors as key figures in our society and they should be reimbursed accordingly. There's another good word of vocabulary there, reimbursed instead of compensated. If I want to add an example into that paragraph, I'm going to add it after the second point about teachers acting as surrogate parents. I could then say, for example, recent reports have shown, and carry on adding my lovely example. So let's look at how that kind of paragraph built into an essay would work well and would score a high mark. So on the task response, essays that score well on task response answer the question directly and develop the topic fully. So a band 9 answer leaves no further questions for the reader. Now, a lot of students who we work with start off writing a good essay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but it's not very well developed. So they'll address the question, they'll make some good points, they might add an example, but I'm left asking why? What? What do you mean? How does that work? I'm left answering too many questions. And if your reader, the examiner, is left answering too many questions, then you have not successfully written enough on task response. So this whole idea of developing the topic fully is really, really important. This is something that we look at on the course and we encourage you to do with all the corrections. So there should be no further questions for the reader. Make sure you don't overgeneralize. Also, so here we're going to show you some words. This is a really top tip. This is something I really think is brilliant in IELTS writing and something to try and remember. So we're going to use words like typically, often, usually, frequently to help us qualify some of the statements in our essay. These are really good words. They are connected to the skill of academic hedging. Again, hedging is something that there's a module on in the course. So, have a listen to this sentence. While there are clearly professions that perform greater services to society than singers and footballers, these typically do not earn a great deal of money for their employers. So, you could equally have these typically, these often, these usually, these frequently. So those little adverbs add a lot of value. So you could say, while there are clearly professions that perform greater services to society than singers and footballers, these typically or often or usually or frequently do not earn a great deal of money for their employers. Doubtless, doctors and teachers deserve to earn a great deal of money for the services they provide. Doctors save lives on a daily basis and take on great responsibility in caring for their patients and their health. Now I'm going to add a bit extra. Furthermore, they've undertaken years of arduous study to pursue their profession and commit to lifelong learning. I'm going to add more in order to stay up to date on therapies and developments in the field. Let's just break down that sentence. That's the section on doctors in this paragraph. But how am I going to score high on the task response? Well, I've done my topic sentence. I've then developed my topic sentence. Then I've added more by using this word furthermore. And then I've built up this lovely complex sentence by saying, in order to stay up to date. So there's 4 ways in that I've going for maximum marks on that task achievement. Then I'm just going to move on to teachers, the bit I read to you before. The important role of teachers cannot be overlooked. And not only do they transmit knowledge to the future generation, but they're directly involved in the shaping of characters, inspiring new ideas, and act as surrogate parents. Then I'm going to add more. These roles, the seriousness of which cannot be overstated, establish teachers and doctors as key figures in our society, and they should be reimbursed accordingly. So I've fully developed that idea and my position, and I'm going back in that final line, they should be reimbursed accordingly. I'm restating my position here. Not in a heavy way, I strongly think that. I don't want me to be there as I think at this stage, but in that paragraph it's very clear. They should be reimbursed accordingly is my position. So I'm very happy with that on the task response. Let's look at the cohesion. Now, if you're going for a high band score, be slightly cautious about words like firstly or secondly. It is okay, but it's not very sophisticated. So these are what we call front position linkers. These are words like firstly, furthermore, moreover, for example. So there's other ways that we can create cohesion, and a sophisticated way to do this is with pronouns or synonyms, so words which are different from the other words you've used before, or ellipsis. Let me give you an example of what I mean here. So these roles, the serious of which cannot be overstated, establish teachers and doctors as key figures in our society, and they should be reimbursed accordingly. So there I'm using pronouns. I'm using these roles rather than saying something like the jobs of doctors and nurses. So I'm saying these roles, I'm referring back to something I've already said before. And then when I'm saying it says establish teachers and doctors as key figures, they should be reimbursed accordingly. They, that is the doctors and nurses. Now, quite often we work with students who are inclined to repeat sentences. Doctors and nurses this, doctors and teachers that. Doctors and teachers should be paid. The jobs of doctors and teachers. And you're writing again and again the same words in the essay. It really affects the coherence. Try to avoid doing this. Try to avoid repetition. It's something when you actually check your essay at the end, you should pick up and you should self-edit on that. The pronouns work much better for coherence. If you want to partially agree, and this is important, the transition between the paragraphs is also very important. So you could use however, or you could use a concession clause, which begins with although. And we do talk about this on the course. It's complicated, it's really worth understanding. Although the above arguments are valid, on the whole, it's also true that. So what I'm doing in this concession is I'm going, yes, but. I'm acknowledging one side. The above arguments are valid, but then I'm going on to a different position. On the whole, it's also true that something else. It's really worth trying to understand how that works. Concession is a really lovely thing to use in academic writing. I could also say, having said that, and then that would be followed by a contrasting statement. Or I could say, that said. Maybe a bit better, having said this, it must also be stated that the above viewpoints regarding salaries are utopian. Utopian, unrealistic. If you're arguing one side of the essay only, you can use the linking words furthermore or additionally, as long as you don't overuse them. But I would strongly suggest that if you are going for your band 7, check out this idea of concession. It's important to acknowledge the other side of the question, not just write one side without even addressing the other side of the argument. So those are two ways we've just been looking at on how to have a great high band score, getting into the task response, task achievement, understanding why you need to develop, and looking at coherence, so not repeating yourself too much. Two more things coming up. Lexical resource. So using language that is not elementary. So we're not going to say it's a big idea or it's very important that. We can use other words. We're not going to use big or small or good or bad or nice. We're going to use really high level vocabulary. Quite useful words can be challenging, stimulating, interesting. There's lots of vocabulary that you can use. Some of the things we've seen in this essay, we've had great responsibility, or we can even use significant responsibility. We've had years of arduous study, as opposed to working hard for many years. We've had commit to lifelong learning, rather than it takes a long time to qualify. We've had pursue their profession, rather than be a doctor. And we've had perform services rather than do operations or see patients. So we've really tried to show a wide range of lexical resource. The other thing which people sometimes forget, which I always try and remind students, is think of your grammar. Don't just write an essay in the present tense. Think of how you can mix up the tenses, show the examiner some skill. So make sure your basic grammar is accurate. Make sure you're getting the tenses correct when you're using them. Really make sure you're getting your subject-verb agreement right. This is something that the examiner is not prepared to accept mistakes on, especially at high-level writing. Make sure you're confident on when to use articles. This is very tricky for some learners in English. And prepositions, which is an area which is very, very hard as well. So tenses, subject-verb agreement, articles and prepositions are key things. Then you can add the fun. Then you can add the magic. You can practice using high-level grammar. So the sentence we looked at before, not only do they transmit knowledge, but are directly involved in the shaping of characters, is a really nice sentence structure. Not only, but. Something else that I think would work very nicely in this essay is a conditional sentence. If professionals were paid more, it's possible that an even higher caliber of people would be attracted to the field. So there I'm using a second conditional. If professionals were paid more, it's possible that an even higher caliber, that's quality, of people would be attracted or might be attracted to its field. So a conditional sentence would work well there. That is coming into the essay quite naturally, and that's going to get me a great score on grammatical range. It's also a second conditional, so I'm getting it into the past tenses, so I'm showing a bit more variety and confidence on my tenses. If you add an example, I also suggest that you use an example using the past simple and the present perfect tenses rather than a present simple example. Show that skill you have in the language. So we're coming to the conclusion, and your conclusion, keep it brief. 2 sentences should be enough. Restate your position. Leave your reader with a general or thought-provoking statement. So here, while ideologically it seems fair that doctors, teachers or other professions that save and shape lives should make more money than those who sing or kick around a football, the reality of the situation is more complex. Perhaps we should all simply strive to do the best work we can and not concern ourselves with the incomes of others. So I'm really putting in my idea, my statement, another thought at the end there. Perhaps we should all strive to do the best work we can and not concern ourselves with the incomes of others. If I don't want to do that, it's absolutely fine to go back to the original one. While ideologically it seems fair that doctors, teachers and other professionals that save and shape lives should make more money, the reality of this situation is more complex. And what I would do there is start with, in conclusion, I agree that, or I believe that. So if I'm going to restate my opinion, it's really important that I do it at the beginning of that conclusion. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've looked at how to agree or disagree essays. To what extent do you agree or disagree? We've looked at planning and brainstorming, so making sure you're answering the right question. We've looked at how to organise your essay. We've looked in detail about how to write a fantastically good paragraph, super high level paragraph. And then we've looked at why that paragraph would score really, really well on those 4 key areas. So if you want to write as well as that, check out the IELTS newsletter. Sign up for our IELTS podcast newsletter. Look into the website where we've got lots and lots of information about how to write these Task 2 essays, as well as the Task 1 general and academic. Sign up for an essay correction. You can get an essay correction, Task 2, Task 1. Send us your essay. We will send you feedback, evaluation on it. Feedback is the best way to improve. Thank you for listening today. I'm Daphne. This is IELTSPodcast.com.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.